with a pledge by George Washington, Mayor Dagg.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Oh, beautiful, for spacious skies, for amber weights of grain, for purple mountain majesties, above the fruited plain. America, America, God shed His grace on thee and crown thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea. Oh, beautiful for pilgrim feet who stood in passion stress, a thoroughfare for freedom beats across the wilderness. America, America, God meant thine every flow. Confirm thy soul in self-control, thy liberty in love. Oh, beautiful for heroes proved in liberating strife, who more than self their country love, and mercy more than life. America, America, may God thy gold refine, till all success be nobleness in every gain divine. Oh, beautiful for patriot dream that seeds beyond the hills, thine alabaster cities lean, undimmed by human tears. America, America, God shed His grace on thee and crown thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea.
Eternal God, our Father, to whom we stand before this evening, as we behold your beauty and your goodness that you bestowed upon us, we pause to say thank you as we acknowledge our need for thee. We thank you, God, for the country that you have given unto us. Thank you for our city leaders, founding fathers, those who stood before us, that they may provide truth and principles based upon your holy word. We thank you for the women and men who have been successors of our city fathers, our forefathers, and as they have come and gathered here to reflect on your goodness and what you've done for our country. Now I pray now that you would help us to walk together, live together as brothers and sisters. We lift up today those persons who have even been victimized on this past week in the Carolinas, in Florida, Houston, other parts of the islands. We are praying for them that you might provide help and healing as only you can. We pray even for our local city that you would bring unity among us, that we might walk hand in hand and we might join our forces together, that we might love one another as you loved us. Even today, God, thank you for this time of reflection. Bless us and keep us as only you can. In the awesome name of Jesus our Christ, we do pray. The people of God said, amen.
This is our 4th annual event. We want to thank each and every one of you for coming and being a part of this awesome program as we celebrate the birthday of our Constitution, which is actually the 17th of September. So Third Friday was so gracious to let us be a part of their Time Warp program. So we are here today to entertain you, to educate you, and to bring the Time Warp from George Washington all the way into the 21st century. So we have here today a lot of our local politicians. They're all around the area here. I'm not sure where they all are from up here, but we want to thank each and every one of them for coming. If you want to raise your hand and wave that you're all here, guys and ladies, thank you. We have special characters here today. We have Linda down there being the Statue of Liberty. We have over here Shirley being Miss Betsy Ross. We have George Washington as Jake Day. Mr. Ed Tennis, we're not sure. He's just Samuel Chase. Okay. We have a few other characters around here. Down on the floor down there, we have Thomas Jefferson, Abraham Lincoln. Did I miss anybody? So we have you in costume. Where? James Madison. You're hiding. Okay. So make sure everybody that's in costume do not leave before we take a group picture. We have Jay Cathell here with us today, who is so graciously taking our pictures for the 2nd year in a row. He does just a wonderful job. So I want to thank him for being here last minute. And then what we're going to do right now is we're going to bring George Washington up for a few words.
Good afternoon, or good evening. Naturally, when Ellen was looking for someone to portray the first president of the United States, she thought, we got to go to the 28th mayor of Salisbury. And it is an absolute honor and privilege to represent, in this time warp, to represent the president of the first president of the United States on this momentous anniversary of our Constitution. I've learned a little bit about George Washington, some things that I didn't know before today, like one of which is George Washington would have totally Facebook Lived this, so give me a second, let me just do that real quick. Okay. President Washington also faced many challenges, one of which President Washington liked to wear a double XL, even though he normally wears a medium or a large. That's why the clothes are a little big on me. President Washington also carried a saber, carried a sword. I do feel a little bit like a pirate carrying around a sword around town. However, it is my saber that I earned upon my commissioning into the Army, not the Continental Army, but the United States Army. But President Washington also faced many challenges. His greatest challenge was to unite the people as a nation. Washington was the first leader of our military. He was a warrior, forging the Potomac in the dead of winter. And these sacrifices are what made our country, and they're what began it as a great country. And we look forward in times of challenge and in times of prosperity to continuing that tradition and looking to those lessons learned from people like George Washington. So one of the things I also did today was I looked at some of the history of George Washington and some of his quotes, some of the things he was known for. I thought I'd just share a couple of those with you today. George Washington said, "I conceive that a knowledge of books is the basis on which all other knowledge rests." George Washington also said, "Be courteous to all, but intimate with few, and let those few be well tried before you give them your confidence." He also said that happiness and moral duty are inseparably connected. He also said that freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. I think a great reminder always. And that we didn't pass it to our children in the bloodstream, and it must be fought for, protected, and handed on for them to do the same. He said that what light is to the eyes, what air is to the lungs, and what love is to the heart, liberty is to the soul of man. So I'm honored to portray General Washington and President Washington here today. And Ellen, I thank you for organizing this day in celebration of our Constitution.
Okay, I'm going to ask the following gentlemen to come up to the stage. We have James Madison by Bunky Luffman. Thomas Jefferson, played by Joe Dillinator. He's taking place of John Milligan, who couldn't be here today, so thank you. Abraham Lincoln by Art North. So I'm going to hand over the microphone to Bunky for the preamble.
Thank you. So as President Washington kind of referred to, when I went through the time warper today, I grew an extra foot and gained about 100 pounds and grew a beard as well. So there's a little bit of a difference in the historic portrait of James Madison. But we're here today to celebrate the Constitution of the United States, which is so important because it really, as a people, we look to that to settle all of our disputes. And it's the volume of law throughout our land. And without a paper like that we all look to and respect and honor, we would be a much radically different country. So I'm here to read the preamble. I know we all had to memorize it in junior high. Unfortunately, in my 44 years on earth, my memory is not what it once was, so I may read a little bit of it. But if you know it, if you still remember it from junior high, you certainly are invited to say it along with me. So we, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America.
Thank you. All right, we're going to have Thomas Jefferson come up next.
First, I'd like to thank the Lady Republicans of Wicomico County for making this time machine work so I could come back. I have a bag here, so I have some travel goods, and I think the first thing, the most important thing, the law of the Holy Bible. And then when you go through what I read, the Declaration of Independence, I talked about our Creator. So I'm referencing this book a little bit. The other thing that I had bought is another big book. Let me dig it out here. It's the 1828 dictionary. So this 1828 dictionary defines terms as of when the Constitution was written. Now here's a fact that you probably didn't know. I was not at the Constitutional Convention. I was actually in Paris as being an ambassador under Articles of Confederation. So, as you know, our first government was the Articles of Confederation, but the Constitution came second. But we're going to talk about the Constitution. And so I think in my bag down here, if I dig a little deeper, in here I have the Constitution. And I'm actually going to, as George Washington said, I'm going to bring my little phone out here, and it was great that the Republicans gave me this because I'm going to use it as a timer so I don't get lost too much. So if you forgive me for starting my timer here. So, and I have 10 minutes, so I think I may already started, but we'll keep going there. So let's start off with, I'll start with the beginning with myself. Oops, those cards got moved around. Over here, sorry about that. And I would also like to thank my wingman, Mr. Neil Moreland, who actually was brave enough to drive me down from Glen Burnie today, because the time machine put us in the wrong place. So we'll just start from there. So just hold on for just a second. So I was born in April 13th, 1743, as a British citizen. But when I died, I actually died July 4th, 1826, as a Virginian citizen. So as you can see, things radically changed in my lifetime. was no longer a British citizen. Some of the accomplishments I had, I was the founder of the University of Virginia in Charlottesville. Also, one of the biggest, I think, things you guys know about, I talked about the Declaration of Independence. I helped author that. I actually, as president, I did the Louisiana Purchase, which was a big deal. So we're going to go talk about that. And one other thing that I'm really surprised that I'm known about is a letter and correspondence I had with the Danbury Baptist Church Association in Connecticut. I don't know if anybody understands why that is important, but we will talk about that. So let me go first to the Declaration of Independence. Now, in the Declaration of Independence, it's too long to read here right now, but I'll just give a brief summary. There was 28, what would you call, the discrepancies we had with the King of England. So in there, we list those out, but in the beginning, we talk about the truths that we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, are endowed by the Creator for certain inalienable rights. So right there, we were referencing the Bible. Where do our rights come from? Do they come from government or no? No, they come from God. And that's why the Holy Bible is important, and we are seeing them trying to take that out of our schools and all that, and it shouldn't be. So that's where we'll start. We'll go with the our inalienable rights, and then it says that among those are life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. Now, when they talked about happiness, they talked about pursuing how they were going to honor their God, their Creator. And as you can see, there's bakers in Oregon who cannot honor their Creator because they're forced to bake a cake for something they don't believe in. So as you can see, our religious liberties are really falling apart here. And as being a person that was thought as being a deist, I still think that is, not where we should be going as a country. The next thing I'd like to talk about real quick, and all this stuff you can research on your own. That's what I would like to say. I'm just giving you a brief thing because I only have 10 minutes, so I'm trying to get a lot in here. So the Danbury Baptist Church, that's the next thing I'd like to talk about. And that is where in the Supreme Court in 1947, so a little ways back, Emerson versus the Board of Education, the Supreme Court said that the Bible and the Ten Commandments had to be removed from schools, and progressively it's gotten worse. And they were trying to use the First Amendment where it says Congress shall make no law respecting religion and establishment of. But the last time I checked, the Board of Education in New Jersey is not Congress. So where did the Supreme Court get that authority to do that? I'm not sure. I think you might want to look into that and see where you think that comes from. I hear a young lady here said they stole it. I can't argue with that. So also, when I was talking about this book right here, in here it talks about the religion and how it's defined. And in this religion, in this book here, it talks about being false and true religions. True religion is Christianity. The false religions are Buddhism and go on like that. But when our Constitution talks about religion, it talks about sects of Christianity. And that's where we have kind of gone wrong there. So next I'd like to talk, and like I said, this is all for everybody who would like to talk to me after. I don't have a lot of time, but I'm just trying to give you a good bit of information as I can in a brief amount of time. The next thing I'd like to talk about is the Louisiana Purchase. Now everybody, I don't know if people know this, but Thomas Jefferson thought he was going to be impeached for doing the Louisiana Purchase because he did not do what the Constitution said. Because if you read the Constitution, Article 1, Section 7, all bills for revenue shall be originated in the House of Representatives. The House of Representatives never had a say in Louisiana Purchase. The Senate actually ratified it. It keeps cutting out on here. The Senate actually ratified, but the House of Representatives had nothing to do with that. And you can read his writings about that he thought he was going to be impeached today. So he understood what the Constitution was, but he understood also that his executive order there, he overstepped his boundary, which he shouldn't have done. And that is about it. I would like to thank again the Republicans. I was kind of short note for this. I tried to do the best I can, and I hope everybody enjoyed it. And just to let everyone know that if you'd like to learn more about these topics, I help teach classes on the Constitution, the Maryland Constitution, and your role as a jury member. So if you'd like to talk to me about that afterwards, just see me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Thomas Jefferson. Now we will have up on stage Art North as Abraham Lincoln.
Thank you. Don't let me forget my hat. Well, I'm here today to give you Lincoln's perspective on the Constitution. And he considered it a permanent document and supreme law of the land. He created a system for operating the government. And Lincoln considered the founders heroes of the Republic. Great respect. He was born shortly after James Madison took over, and he was about 27 years old when Madison died, so there's an overlap here. And then with Thomas Jefferson, he was about 17 when Jefferson died. So Lincoln started reading a borrowed book on the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence and the Northwest Ordinance of 1787. Why is that important? Because that had in it the need to have a free territory, free of slavery. Now, Lincoln did an awful lot of reading as a young man. He had about a year and a half of school, and that was it. So much of what he learned himself. He used to go to his next door neighbor in Indiana. He was a farmer, and he would hire himself out so that he could borrow the book to read it. Well, the farmer's name was Josiah Crawford, and the farmer kind of took advantage of him. You know, he'd have him there from dawn until dusk, and finally let him read the book. Well, this farmer had a huge nose, big nose, and he would blow that nose a lot. So Lincoln got to laughing, and he said, well, that fellow Josiah is just bugling. So he had a bugle. Well, if we look at how important books were to Lincoln, we know that Emily Dickinson had a particularly wise saying. She said, there's no frigate like a book, which means we don't have to go to all these strange lands. We can learn about it if we have the book. And he did. Well, the Constitution is the spinal column of the nation. It bound the American people to goals which were incompatible with slavery. Lincoln researched the attitudes of the founders towards slavery, and his conclusion was they had marked slavery as an evil, not to be extended, but to be tolerated and protected. Only because of, and so far as, its actual presence among us makes that toleration and protection a necessity. So they had to do what they could do so that they could have a government to satisfy the Southern representatives. Well, Lincoln suggested that Congress of the U.S. has no power under the Constitution to interfere with the institution of slavery in the different states. Now this puts Lincoln between a rock and a hard place. Even as a youngster, he developed the idea that slavery was wrong. It ate away on him for many years. His father, Tom Lincoln, was actually belonged to a Kentucky Abolition Society. Now that society was started in 1807, so we know there were people before and after the Constitution was drawn that did not want slavery. Abolitionists were condemned, particularly by Democrats. Remember that? In control of Congress. Of course, they were Southerners for many years, using the constitutional guarantee as the argument. Well, it took Lincoln 3 years after being elected as president to enact the Emancipation Proclamation after a strategic battle the Union forces won at Antietam. So this executive order, which skirted the edge of the Constitution, since it freed the slaves in territories in rebellion, it could not free slaves in non-seceded states, which were Maryland, Missouri, Delaware, and Kentucky. Much later, the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments were passed, which did away with slavery, thank God. All the political maneuvering before and after the southern states seceded, leading to the Civil War, required a level of political agility to maintain a semblance of a Union administration capable of running the country. Britain and France were very interested in how this is going to happen. The constitutional argument made by the secessionist states was that they voluntarily entered the Union, signed off, so could leave unilaterally. And these states were South Carolina, Mississippi, Florida, Alabama, Georgia, Louisiana, and Texas. The Confederates, as they called themselves, developed their own Constitution, their own Congress, their own President, Jefferson Davis, and called the actions war. Well, Lincoln was having no part of that. This was not war, this was a rebellion. No war had been declared, there was no separate country that existed. So eventually the CSA, Confederate States of America, added Arkansas, North Carolina, Tennessee, and Virginia. Now there was 11. In the North there was 11, the border states. Lincoln said they do not have the legal basis in the Constitution for secession because it discusses admission as a state, but not withdrawal. A lot of logic there. The Union position then was considered perpetual, and the military action needed was to put down civil disturbance. This took 4 years, and at the cost of over 700,000 lives, both North and South. The rebellion was crushed after much destruction of the country, families, and economy was torn apart, and taxation had to be made to pay for this. Oh, he started it, that's right, and continues to this day. What examples do we have that Lincoln actually tampered with the usual constitutional procedures? Well, Lincoln considered the prosecution of the war to be mainly a function of the chief executive, to be carried out with minimal interference from the other branches of the government. Well, this prosecution was to occur without excessive respect, and these are his words, to constitutional niceties, such as protecting individual rights and it was exercising exceptional power only in the interest of self-preservation, meaning the Union nation. Some other examples: blockade in the southern ports had to be done, keep the arms, munitions, trade goods out of southern hands. So this was done before Congress got a hold of it. There was no time to do it. Congress did approve it afterwards, after the fact. The increase in the U.S. Navy, from scratch. There was no Navy. Worked feverishly with Secretary Seward to rebuild, to enforce this blockade. Well, Congress has the power to raise Army and Navy funding in the Constitution. But there was respect by Lincoln for the separation of powers, deep respect, and these were agonizing decisions for him. Politics of the day described by a 70-year-old Lord Palmerston. You remember him? Prime Minister of England. He had no love for the United States. Those colonials, don't you know? And he considered democracy a degenerative form of government. Well, they got that wrong, didn't he? Because we have a constitutional republic. He said, American politics combine the morals of a horse race, the manners of a dogfight, the passion of a tap room, and the emotions of a gambling house. Well, it should be noted that the British Navy, back in those days, mid-1800s, it was at the height of Britain's imperial power in the world. And they had over 856 fighting ships, a formidable force. Today, the U.S. has less than 250. Well, a few little extras in today's force. After the rebels' attack on Fort Sumter, April 12, 1861, the Civil War started. The president demanded swift action, increase the numbers in the Navy 18,000 without Congress's approval. It had to be done. But by year's end, there were 700,000 men in the military, Navy, Army, Marine Corps. Lincoln felt that the measures, otherwise unconstitutional, might become lawful by becoming indispensable to the preservation of the Constitution through preservation of the nation. How about that for logic? Lincoln suspended the privilege of habeas corpus, you'll remember. It allows someone who is incarcerated to challenge the incarceration in court. Sheriff Lewis is around here. There is a constitutional provision, of course, that exists in Article 1, Section 9, detailing powers that Congress has to issue this. And it says that this shall not be suspended unless when in the cases of rebellion or invasion, the public safety might require it. There's the out. Lincoln used the executive order to suspend this in the early days of the war and later persuaded Congress, to whom the right of suspension belonged, to take the action after the fact. Demagoguery and would-be terrorists were summarily arrested, brought before the military tribunal, and at least imprisoned. Lincoln also needed to increase the period of volunteer enlistment to 3 years, and trusted public funds to private persons, not supposed to do that according to the Constitution, for the purchase of arms and military supplies. There was no time to wait. He needed it now, but not later. The reason being, the South had taken over many of the Union forts. They were loaded with arms. Plus, they had Britain and France delivering on a regular basis. So before secession, there was rioting in Baltimore. Remember that? There was fear that Maryland would vote for secession. Well, Lincoln decided to send no army to arrest the legislature. He could have. He used restraint with local control, and the result was Maryland never joined the Confederacy. Lincoln called this action, this is typical Lincoln, first of the redeemed. Another decision. Reports came in that mobs were intending to rip up the railroad tracks from Annapolis to Philadelphia. And so it was to prevent Union troops from coming down, going into the Capitol, and protecting it. The Capitol was surrounded by Jubal Early, Confederate general, and this would have been a disaster. Lincoln suspended the writ of habeas corpus for the public safety. He said General Scott of the Union Army could arrest and detain without resort to ordinary processes such individuals as he might deem dangerous to public safety. Well, this is basic constitutional protection against arbitrary arrest, isn't it? The Constitution only allows Congress to suspend except for the conditions noted. So here we have a humble man with great political acuity, struggling with some of the most difficult problems the country had ever had and hopefully ever will have. The framers left the slavery question for other generations. Thanks a lot, George. Just kidding. Lincoln hit it head on. Glancing blows initially, but this practice was stopped forever by this log cabin president. He actually did live in a log cabin, folks, as you know. Dirt floor, very poor, and was the first log cabin president. There were a series of them after this. Well, I leave you with a quote from Thomas Paine, one of the founders. When men yield up the privilege of thinking, the last shadow of liberty quits the horizon. It has been an honor to be here tonight. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Okay, next we have the presentation of awards. We have to skip Ernie's one song, but he will be singing at the end due to the rain delay. So we're going to have Ann Shaheen, who is our education chair, but she's our school teacher tonight. And she is going to bring up, we're jumping into the 21st century with the Wicomico High School students, that one from each school. So we're going to go ahead and get started with that.
Okay, do you two want to come up? And I'll share the mic with you. Okay. Most of you do have a program, and if you'll take a look, we have a grand essay winner from James and Bennett, Sarah Allen, and we have a runner-up because the group that I was a part of had trouble deciding which was the top, and they both are. And they have a chance. We have some special things for them in a few minutes, but they are going to read their essays. So, Sarah first. Is that good? Okay. Thank
you. Before I begin, I just want to say thank you for allowing me this wonderful opportunity to share my work with all of you. According to the Merriam-Webster Dictionary, a constitution is a body of fundamental principles or established precedents according to which a state or other organization is acknowledged to be governed. A constitution is created with the predisposition to help guide and establish a country. The United States of America possesses its own constitution, created in 1787 and signed by many delegates of the Continental Congress. This document has had many implications on the United States as a nation and continues to have effects on the life of Americans thriving in the 21st century. One way in which the Constitution continues to guide and affect the 21st century pertains to the rights it grants, leading America to be known as a free country. A right is a moral or legal entitlement to have or obtain something or to act in a certain way. Some of the many rights established in the Constitution with the greatest implications on the 21st century include freedom of speech, religion, and press, protection of the rights to life, liberty, and property, and undelegated powers kept by the states and the people. The First Amendment elaborates on the freedom of speech, religion, and the press. Today, Americans as a society speak freely of their own opinions. Opinions can be very controversial topics, especially Opinions can be very controversial topics, especially because every person is entitled to their own. As a result, the right to an opinion and being able to elaborate on it has enhanced Americans' communication and listening skills. This is often done through social media, such as Twitter, Snapchat, Instagram, Facebook, etc. These social media sites have increased in usage rates to 7 in 10 Americans using one of these websites. That is a lot of people expressing their speech and generating a good amount of money for the economy. Also, hearing others' thoughts can help deepen understanding in topics as a whole. For example, research. Using different theories of information obtained by different people, scientists have figured out many solutions to problems today, such as cancer, military strategies, etc. The second freedom, stated in Article 1, religion, enables people to practice their faith. Many people with the same faith congregate and celebrate. This coming together has promoted relationships between people and deepened the strength of Americans as a society. There is more power in groups, as many may say. The last topic stated in the First Amendment is freedom of press. Freedom of press has many implications on society. Businesses and companies use the press for advertisements. For example, U.S. magazines made over $70 billion in 2004, and U.S. newspapers made over $46 billion in 2004. These advertisements create competition. With this competition, these businesses and companies try to enhance their work, which in the long run will increase revenue due to more products being sold. With an increased revenue, American economy is affected positively. An increase in wealth increases power. Also, an increase in work would increase the need for workers or jobs, generating opportunities to create lives better for the American people. As seen by just the First Amendment discussed, the Constitution creates freedoms which influence the American society of today's times. These freedoms help to define America as the land of the free and set the basis for the strength our country has acquired. With this in mind, I challenge you to think of how the Constitution impacts your everyday life. You might just be amazed at what you discover. Thank you for allowing me this opportunity to share my thoughts with you. I hope everyone has a safe and wonderful night. Thank you.
It gives me a great pleasure to introduce Briley Kelly. And before she starts to read, I was so pleased when I visited James and Bennett, and they let me call the girls down so I could talk with them about what we had in mind. It's your turn.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Briley Kelly. I would like to thank the Republican women of Wicomico County for inviting me to speak at the Constitution's 230th birthday celebration. I would also like to thank my family, my history teacher, Mr. Wynn, and all in attendance. Last school year, I was presented with the opportunity to write an essay addressing the effects the Constitution has on America today. It was graciously requested of me to come and read it before you. So what effects does the Constitution have on the United States of America in the 21st century? One of the biggest questions of today is whether the Constitution is a living, breathing document, or if the Constitution is just a rigid framework upon which our republic is formed. The founders did not make the Constitution so that it would change with society. It was made to stand firm. The effects of the Constitution are the same they were in the 18th century. The only difference is how it is now being interpreted. When the Constitution was ratified, and for a long while after, it was used verbatim. When society started changing, some members of the government thought it was necessary to start interpreting the Constitution instead of following it like the Founding Fathers intended. Judicial activism is when a judicial ruling is believed to be based off of personal belief and not on the law, or in this case, the Constitution. In recent years, many judges have been trying to use judicial activism and justify it as interpretation. To many uninformed Americans, this may seem like a good idea. However, if the original intent of the Constitution is considered, it becomes obvious that there is no need to interpret it. The 10th Amendment states that the powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectively, or to the people. Education was supposed to be left to the states, but there is a Department of Education in the federal government. It all depends on what kind of constitutional interpreter you are. I am an originalist. This means that I consider the original intent of the Constitution and what the framers meant when they wrote it. When an issue arises where the Constitution is needed, originalists tend to look at the Federalist Papers, notes from the Constitutional Convention, and whatever other documents they can find that pertain to the Constitution and that issue. This method tends to provide judges with the most original meaning of the Constitution. There are also modernists, historical literalists, and democratic interpreters. The Constitution provides Americans with a kind of cheat sheet. Whenever a problem arises within the country, judges often turn to the Constitution for answers. The number of effects the Constitution has on Americans today is uncountable. From the preamble to the Bill of Rights, every single word has a lasting effect on America. The First Amendment, that gave Americans their freedom of speech and religion, will constantly be utilized. The 13th Amendment, that abolished slavery, arguably the most important amendment to this day, will forever affect the American people and the way that we live. The 19th Amendment, that gave women the right to vote, drastically changed elections and the way the country sees women. Every single word, every single amendment will forever affect America. The way the Constitution is interpreted will change the way it is seen and the effects it has on the American people. The Constitution has affected America in the 21st century, but more importantly is how the judges have affected the Constitution. The more and more it is interpreted, the more the general understanding of it will change. If the Constitution was read and used verbatim, these problems would never arise. Judicial interpretation has affected the Constitution more than the Constitution has affected America in the 21st century. Thank you.
Okay, at this time, we're going to have Delegate Enterton come up and Delegate Chris Adams, please come up, present some awards.
Hey everybody, how y'all doing? Ooh, this thing is loud. Oh my goodness. How y'all doing? My brothers of the brush, how you boys doing over there? Make some noise if you're excited to shave that mess off tonight. There you go. Right on. Senator Mathias, I see him in the back. You want to come up here and hang out with us? Come on. So, we have, what, 2 presidents here with us? The other one had to leave? Nope, there's one there. It's not too often you get to hang out with 2 presidents. I think we're going to have to get a selfie of that. So, all right, now that everybody's wide awake and excited. Ooh, it's like church. Come on now. We done paid the offering. We're good. We can make some noise. All right, so we have some citations to hand out, and so we'll start with that. As a matter of fact, I'm going to hand the mic over to President, who do you want to be today? James Madison, who did some really cool things. So you're going to read these citations off, Mr. President, and we'll have President Lincoln come up here and hang out with you.
Sure.
All right.
All right. I heard these ladies would also be getting peaches. Is that correct? As part of their prizes? Yes? No? Yes? No? I guess not. Maybe the city council president could bring them. I don't know. All right. The first one is for Aaron Green, Wicomico High School. There you go. Congratulations. I can't see. And Delegate Adams has given them a book of the Constitution of both America and Maryland. Yes. Yeah. All right. All right. I want to recognize Luke Engel, who unfortunately couldn't make it this evening. Could we give him a round of applause? From Salisbury Christian School, champion. The runner-up, and who we heard speak from James M. Bennett, is Miss Briley Kelly. There There we go. I got to switch hands so I can see. We can high five.
Congratulations.
Right on. Okay. And the next person is both the James M. Bennett High School champion as well as the Wicomico County champion, Sarah Allen. Congratulations.
All right, let's give these ladies a round of applause. We want to thank the Board of Education for helping us with this event as well. They went to all the high school teachers to see what students wanted to participate in the essay contest. Every school was offered the opportunity. So thank you, ladies, for being here today and sharing with us your essays. And thank you, Delegate Anderton and Adams. Is Lori Bach in the audience? Lori Bach? Lori Bach was the one that helped us head this event for the high school students.
I called her my angel because she helped distribute things that the students would need to follow. And I don't see her, but she's the supervisor of the high schools.
Okay, we're going to leave the best for last. Mr. Ernie Evans of the Evans family is going to come up and sing a few songs for us. Just one.
Just the one.
How many of y'all love the USA? That's what I want to know. Come on, make some noise for our country. If tomorrow all the things were gone, I'd work for my life, and I had to start again with just my children and my wife. I thank my God above to be living here today, 'cause the flag still stands for freedom, and they can't take that away. I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free, and I won't forget the men who died, who gave that right to me, and I'm gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today, 'cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA. From the lakes of Minnesota through the hills of Tennessee, across the plains of Texas, from sea to shining sea, from Detroit down to Houston, from Salisbury to LA, there's pride in every American heart, and it's time we stand and say, I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free, and I won't forget the men who died, who gave that right to me, and I'm gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today, 'cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA. I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free, and I won't forget the men who died, who gave that right to me, and I'll gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today, 'cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA.
bless you all.
Is that not a way to end our program? We want to thank you on behalf of Republican Women of Wicomico. This is a nonpartisan event, even though we're putting it on. We want to thank all of our sponsors that are in our program, the people that were doing advertisement, that did free advertising for us on radio and television. We want to thank each and every one of them. We want to thank each and every one of you for coming out here and celebrating the Constitution of the United States. Good night.
Thank you.